You're listening to Dramas Over Flowers with Saya, Anisa, and Porama.
Hi, I'm Anisa.
I'm Porama. And you're listening to a short, long yak where we do get really spoilery, but you will have ample warnings, and there are always the show notes to refer to find out exactly where the spoiler sections start.
Yes, we're going to start out by talking about some non-spoilery Extraordinary Attorney Woo thoughts because we are both obsessed with it right now.
So obsessed. So obsessed.
So obsessed.
Dude, I saw this one meme that I found hilarious, which was basically that when they were pitching the Attorney Woo drama to the producers, they were like, it's a show about like this young attorney, like she's a rookie at a law firm. And they're like, okay, that's all cool. But why is your CGI budget so high? And they're like, well, because of the whales.
Oh my God, I love the whales. Okay, so I did my episodes 1 through 4 first impressions post for the blog already. So I feel like I should let you give your impressions of the drama first.
My first impressions of the drama were like, I can't believe how realistic the court proceedings are. Is this drama land?
The legal stuff is actually really good. It's surprisingly so interesting. There's like petty cases about things like rezoning and compensation for a wedding dress that didn't fit properly, and I'm just like riveted. I'm like, this is so interesting.
Yeah, and I can't believe that more courtroom dramas don't just have like cases like these, because this is the stuff that we don't know what to anticipate on, because like when it's murder cases and, horrible crimes have been, we all more or less know where we stand and what the laws are. But whenever you come to these kind of cases, we don't even know what laws apply, which side is right. Like, especially with the rezoning case that happened in episode 7 and 8, you actually had a pretty good case made on both sides. Which kind of made you wonder, are our heroes supporting their clients? Are they in the wrong? I mean, that it just makes for really good drama, and I can't believe that most dramas aren't willing to put in the research and just don't seem very interested in building up interesting cases like these.
Totally agree. And also, and interestingly enough, like I've been dealing with some community stuff with the work that I do with my mosque, and like literally they're going through the same thing. Like there's a transit project coming through that neighborhood where the mosque is. The people in the neighborhood are really concerned that they're going to be like gentrified out of the area, and like there's been a lot of like extremely emotional backlash against that from activists, but then it's also like, what about the voice of the people in the neighborhood? So like we've been trying to anyway, like I was like, this is very I can relate to this right now because it's very related to what I've been kind of thinking about for a lot of the last few weeks. But also like on top of that, not only are the cases so interesting, but like this works really well because it's truly, I mean, with the exception of episode 7 and 8, which does deal with that rezoning case, every episode has been very contained in the sense that like it's episodic. It deals with one case,
Yeah.
and then it moves to the next one. And like it's so refreshing not to have like an overarching, like with law school, for example, you saw the kids kind of doing their day-to-day like study and school and all of that, but mainly it was this overarching case that they stretched out over the entire season. And like it was, I mean, that drama also had other issues, but like I like this thing of like it's more of a workplace drama because it's not like a legal drama that became about something else, which is kind of what law school became, or like sometimes you have Lawless Lawyer. It's not really a legal drama. It's about his like revenge story.
It's about a lawyer being awesome and kicking butts.
Yes.
And looking awesome while kicking butts.
Looking very awesome. Yes. And wearing really nice suits. I mean, I love the suits in here. Like her friend, Chesuyeon, love her suits.
Dude, she's amazing, but also her clothing. Man, the styling is on point.
I want her clothes. But let's talk about Park Eun-bin as Woo Young-woo first.
Yeah. So, something that was probably done really well before the drama dropped was that in the trailers, they kept her introduction to her introduction, where she comes on screen and basically just says, "My name is Woo Young Yu," backwards and forwards, and then like lists the number
All
of
the
things.
palindromes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's it. That's all they actually gave us in the trailer, and then the drama happened. I don't think they even released like a proper trailer, like a a larger trailer. I think there is one, but that was released like practically the day before the drama launched. They gave you,
Yeah, I didn't see that
they
one.
give you no information. That one actually may also be just made by like Swoon or something, and not like an official one. But it's it, I like that you had no time or like information to really prepare for, because a lot of times, because historically these kind of characters, especially when the synopsis already told us that we were dealing with another autistic savant, your prejudices from having watched a lot of other dramas do Rain Man style storytelling kind of like becomes like a block and doesn't even let you start the drama or have preconceived notions and like feel really bad about it. The fact that Park Hyun Min was in it was the reason I started watching it. But honestly, I was also grateful that I had no more information on the story. And then I could just start and fall in love with her from the moment the story started. Even like
Yes.
the little childhood part, which was just so cutely dramatic.
Honestly, like, yes, I also was like, okay, Park and Bin, since you're starring in this, I will give it a chance. That was like my main thing. I was like, okay, the cast and even Kang Tae-ho, like I really liked him in Run On. So I was like, let me just give this show one episode, And then I think not even from the first scenes, it was like the intro was so
Oh.
beautiful. Like I watched that intro. I don't skip the intro ever. Like I was watching it with my sister and I was like, don't skip the intro. It's just so like it just gives you such a tone of the show immediately. Like you get the vibe of the show and it's just so there's something so warm and gentle about the show while not at the same time it's not a fantasy. It's not like sugarcoating anything. You still see a lot of like the difficult and tough stuff about life. And particularly for Youngwoo as an autistic lawyer, like all the prejudices that she faces all the time and all the different ways. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about it is like, okay, so it is a story about her and it's not necessarily like about her autism, but her autism is an integral part of who she is and how people see her. And so it explores not only the violent, sort of really blunt and blatant kind of discrimination that she faces, but also the more subtle stuff,
Yeah.
And we'll go into this more when we discuss one particular character. But like even people who are well intentioned, even Kang Kyung's character who plays her sort of I guess her supervising lawyer, Jung Myung Suk-hee, um he doesn't want her at the first, in the beginning when he finds out that she's his new rookie, he's like, no, I'm not. This person can't be a lawyer because she's autistic.
Yeah.
And then he becomes like this huge like
advocate
quiet
for her,
champion
yeah.
for her. I know, like his little smiles when he thinks that nobody's looking at him. And when she does something that he's like really proud of her for, just kill me.
But also
I love him
every
so much.
time she surprises him and he's too polite to like, retort even if he's annoyed. So he just
Right.
quietly like gulps the words down and he just looks at her for a moment. And I was like, oh my God, you're such a sweetheart.
He's so like, see, he always has that like wacky, funny energy, and he brings that to this too in a really, very successful way. Like it's hilarious, but at the same time, like he gets to have so much more substance than I've seen from him in previous roles, where he's always like the wacky best friend, comic relief, But he has the acting chops, and so like I'm really happy for him that he gets to show them off here.
Absolutely, and
have,
he
like,
has main actor billing. Like he gets main role billing here, and I'm just so glad that this drama. So that this drama sees its storytelling differently just from this one thing, because he's not part of like the romantic arc, but the fact that he is one of the major characters in the story, it is apparent practically 10 minutes into the first episode, and it is reflected in the billings, which often isn't the case with most dramas, which prioritize, romantic leads over everything else.
For sure. And he is that like mentor figure for her, right?
Right.
So, I mean, this drama is so popular that it's actually like it was the most watched non-English show on Netflix globally from July 4th to 17th.
Apparently,
So it's doing really well.
it either already has or is about to defeat Squid Games in terms of like the initial, airing numbers, like while it was airing.
Yeah, people are like, is this the next Squid Game? Which just like gives me so much joy because it's such a different show. And now I'm like, all these people will stop thinking that K-dramas are all like Squid
I also
Game.
really liked the CNN headline where it was like, this new drama about a young rookie attorney is, the next Squid Game. Not once did they mention autism. And I was like, yes, actually, yes. I mean, it's inside the article, but like, this is just the headline. Because like, how do I put it? There are a lot of these dramas that kind of capitalize on any kind of neurodiverse storytelling as like the main marketing thrust. And and that really isn't this story. Like, of course, her neurodiversity is a huge part of the story. It's a driver, like how people react to her, how she reacts to the world. All of that stuff is huge. But it's also about one more rookie lawyer entering a firm and her life. And how nice is that?
And it's like, and it's not treating her as some kind of special snowflake just because she's autistic. I mean, that is definitely part of how, part of her journey. And it's, and it affects her life in many ways. But at the same time, like, she also just like makes a lot of rookie lawyer mistakes. Like there's one case where she's like, why can't we do this? And he's like, you don't understand as a rookie lawyer, like how powerful this like one document is, like that's been signed. Right. And she's like, but why? Like it was signed under false pretenses. And he's just like, oh, young Padawan, like, so there's all these moments where like she wants to do something and she is like, and especially because of her personality. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is also partly because she's autistic. Like she's very honest and like kind of earnest with everything. So if she reads it in the law books, she's like, well, this is the law. Like we should be able to prove that this is the law. And like she never lies. But like, it's not like the real world doesn't work like that. And like, that's partly what she's learning. Right. And I think that's like, as a rookie lawyer, I think all rookie lawyers probably have to learn that when they first start practicing that, like, oh, things aren't going to be like how they were when I was in law school. Like my ideal version of what it was going to be a lawyer, especially I think if you go into law as like someone who wants to, fight for people to have the rights that, often they don't get, or like to, then reality gives you a hard smack on the back of the head, like the one that Kwon Minu deserves.
Oh my God. So, okay, we will get into him in a second. The other thing that I really liked about it is, like you said, like she makes rookie lawyer mistakes, but also, how like, slowly as the other characters realize what an amazing memory she has and how great she is at thinking out of the box. The fact that she's been topping her class in SNU, like it all like culminates to this like overall very strong and very correct impression that she is clearly super gifted. But then several cases later, she and Soo-young, her colleague, they are handling this one case and they are trying all sorts of methods to win it. And they don't do very well until finally they get help from somebody else. And it's the most obvious path possible. And both of them look at each other like, we are idiots. And I love that.
That was a great moment. I loved that. So before we get into spoilers, I want to talk about, so Kang Taeho's character is, I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that he's a romantic lead. It's pretty obvious from episode 1.
By now, if you're on Tumblr, you would have seen it's so disappointing as a tag, like everywhere. Kang Taeho saying it's, okay, we'll get to that scene.
Yeah, we want to talk about what context that said is, but like, I love how he's not, I mean, K-dramas are getting better about this, but they don't even attempt or like they never even consider starting out with this like antagonistic relationship between the romantic leads here.
Yeah.
he's just such a good person.
Mm,
And not only is he such a good person, because there are a lot of characters in the drama that are just really genuinely good people,
mm,
he has a way of looking at the world that's like really compatible with hers. Like he also kind of, like in episode 1, there's that whole scene where like he's like, "Why don't we do a dance to get through the revolving doors?" And it's like that's not something that everyone would do, right? Especially not everyone who works at this high-powered law firm because it's kind of a, a rigid kind of hierarchical structure. Not everyone would be like doing that at the building of their workplace, right? And so he has that kind of he does what he feels is right and he doesn't really care what other people think or how they're gonna judge him based on that.
mm.
And he's not only willing to put himself in Youngwo's perspective, he's like happy to do that. He wants to. He already sees the world in like slightly like off center way. And so like I love how he's like wants to be part of her world. And even though there's like humor in their interactions, because of sometimes he like doesn't understand certain things about her because he's still getting to know, things like how she kind of experiences the world or like how she what her like emotional cues are for how she's feeling. And it's like funny, but it's not funny because like she's the butt of the joke because she's autistic. It's funny because like he doesn't understand or like, there's this point where he's like trying to subtly show his feelings to, and you can't do subtlety with Youngwoo. Like she's not gonna see it. And so like the joke is kind of on him because he should know better at this point not to be subtle with her.
There's this one point. Okay, can we move into the spoilery territory because everything I'm thinking of saying has a spoiler.
Yes. Spoilers from here on out. If you don't want to hear spoilers, just come back when you've watched the show.
Okay, so there is a point where Kang Tae-ho's character, what's his name? Lee Jun-ho. Lee Jun-ho leaves a gift for Young-oh on her table. And she's like, I don't know who gave me this. So she just chucks it. So the next day he's like, did you get the gift? And she's like, oh, but I got rid of it. I didn't know you had given it to me. And he's like, okay.
He's like, oh, so quickly.
Oh, yeah, that was fast.
It's funny also because like when he buys it in the store, it's like one of those moments where you're like, oh, you know how like a lot of times romantic couples in K-dramas will have like an object that represents their love, like the boys over flowers, like meteor necklace or whatever. So you see him buying it and like you don't really get a close look at it. So that it's like your expectation is, oh, like he's gonna give it to her and she's gonna see it and she's gonna like not feel like quitting and she's gonna come back and it's gonna be like a significant object for them. Nope, she just checks it. That's it. You never got to see it up close. It's so good. I was dying. I was like, this drama is so smart. And I wish I'd mentioned this earlier, but I guess we kind of said it without saying it, but like the writing is so good. Like not only the acting, but the writing and like the detail that they put into it is like you can just see how much care is put into every line of dialogue, the way that the world has been built, the way that the characters have been constructed. Like, oh, it's just so good.
Absolutely. And the bizarre thing is that I don't think this writer has too many credits. I mean, they have like one movie credit in 2019, which is Innocent Witness. I haven't watched that. But my point being, they have one director credit, one movie credit, both for movies, and this is their first script. And I'm sure they have experience otherwise, but like that's all. So you don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know what this person is capable of, and they do this.
That just blew us out of the water. Also, like a fun little tidbit, and we didn't talk about her best friend yet.
We will. We will.
Yes, but like, there's this one part where she's like trying to coach Eunwoo about Youngwoo about like how she should act in court, and like she quotes from that movie.
Which movie?
So it's like a little not Innocent Witness.
Oh, I haven't watched
Remember
that.
where she's like, but no, she says that it's from that movie. Like,
oh,
because like the bar owner, he's like, how can you coach her? Like, you don't know anything about the law. She's like, how dare you? I've seen all the movies. That's how people learn about the law these days. And then she like quotes a bunch of movies and she's like, have you seen this one? Have you? And Young was just like, nope,
dude,
nope,
I
haven't seen any.
That is so
And then she's like telling her, she's like training her how to say objection, Your Honor. And then so she like trains her. I loved that scene.
Yeah, and that was again so well done because Park Hyun Bin does a really good job of the monotone, like without any emphasis in a sentence, like delivering these lines. It's not like there is no emotion or like impact in her delivery. All of that stuff's there, but there is an absence of cadence in a certain way, and you can't tell like where the highs and the lows are in a sentence. So for her to
Right.
say,
She doesn't speak in a typical way where like you kind of get those cues that you've kind of absorbed over the years of like,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
what somebody means from their
If we
tone.
had
Yeah.
her on for this podcast, she would have the most level audio ever. Like with our audios, we have to put levelers to make sure it's not ha and then ha.
It would be so perfect to edit. She would be a dream of a podcast guest. I mean, she's a dream anyway.
Yeah,
I love her.
that's true. So no, but so for her friend Yurami to get her to say objection with like high emphasis objection. Youngu was having a lot of trouble getting there because she's like objection, objection, objection. But it's just that the emphasis wasn't coming out, so that practice really helped. And so when she was in court and she was like objection, she does it with like the maximum amount of passion possible because that is what Kurami taught her.
And I love how Gurami was in the audience with this like smirk of like, I'm so proud of you. Like I helped to do that. Yeah, their whole friendship is so beautiful because you kind of see. I love that we got their backstory and also like how it came in so organically with like them going back to visit the town where they met and the place that kind of they were both bullied. And then you get to see like, here's how they bonded and how they got together. And then also like, she just pops up all the time to just like be a support for Youngwoo in a way that she really needs. But it's also like you can just see how much joy they take in each other's presence. And it's like so lovely. Like it's just so like it's one of the best friendships that I've seen on screen in a long time. Like, and I just and she also says like Gurami is my only friend, but I think that Suyeon is also a good friend.
Oh
to
yeah,
her.
absolutely. And something that makes me really fond of this show is that so you know how the original I wouldn't say the original translation, but like the way the original title is, it's more like Weird Attorney Woo, and a lot of people got really offended when they found that out. But I don't think that makes sense because when you say it in Korean, you don't mean weird in a bad way. Like that's a Western conception. You mean everybody's weird in certain ways. And you can see how Kang Tae-ho's like Junho is weird in certain ways. You can definitely see how Yurami is weird in certain ways. Every character, including Attorney Jung, have their own like weird quirks, and the show kind of makes sure that you notice these things. Like it's not just Youngwoo being like this wholly different thing whereas everybody else conforms. That's not what the story is telling us. Like everybody sticks out in their own ways, and so does Youngwoo in her own way. And it's just, and which is why the friendships work. It's not like this one straight man character befriending like this odd duckling and anybody could have been swapped out for that straight man character. The way Soo-young's friendship works with Youngwoo is that Soo-young is just naturally very kind and fair-minded. The way that canteen scene where Soo-young's like, yeah, so what was my nickname? And Youngwoo is like, you're the spring sunshine. And like in almost poetic words, was like, she tells her like, these are the many ways in which you've always helped me. And the fact that she noticed like and kind of like listed them in her own head, like made notes of them and saw Soo-young in this really warm light because of all of these actions. And Soo-young wasn't expecting any of that. Like she never did it for credit. She never wanted acknowledgement. But like when Youngwoo does that in her own way, like tells her all of that, Soo-young is like blubbering and like she's just, oh my God.
She's so taken aback. Yeah. And I love also how like the show, it doesn't do that thing where like it portrays autistic people as like these sort of like cold and emotionless robots, which is like it's such a terrible and damaging stereotype about autistic people in our societies in general, but like it shows up a lot in media too, right? But like, no, like you see from the beginning that Youngwoo is a very loving person. It's just that she doesn't express that love in a typical way or in a way that is like sort of the social script of, you know, sort of like whatever, like the dominant quote unquote neurotypical way. It's like she has her own way of showing it. And what's so beautiful about the show is like over time, over the first few episodes, it like teaches you how to read her.
Mm.
And so by the time you get to that scene, and I don't know, it's like episode 6 or something, you already know that she's like, you kind of know that she's gonna say something that you love, and you're just kind of like waiting for her to say it. But then when she says it, it's like so much better than you could have imagined. And like, because you know that she loves her friend, it's just that she doesn't show it in a typical way. And like the thing with Suyeon is like the two of them, what they have in common is like they both have a really strong sense of justice. So there's that one scene where they're defending that North Korean defector, and Lawyer Jung is at first, he's like, you know, he tells Young-woo, like, you have to calm her down. Do whoa, whoa. That whole thing with the whoa, whoa is just so good. Every time I was just cracking up. But like, she also just gets so caught up because the both of them are like, oh my God, like we have to help this woman. And it's so cute to see them teaming up like that. And you're like, oh yeah, like this is absolutely why these two are friends, because they care so much
But
about
also it
fighting
was such
injustice.
a brilliant way of subverting like the cold, distant, persona
Yes.
of most autistic people, because you would think that Attorney Chung like designated Young-woo or to that case because he thought she would be like the less emotional of the two, and it turns out like
Right. So it's showing his, even though he really likes her and he is so glad to have her on his team, but he still has some of that like prejudice,
Preconceived notions,
about
yeah.
this particular aspect. Exactly. And then like it just overturns that. And it's like, I love how like the show doesn't make any of this obvious, like it's done in such a beautiful, organic way. Oh, it's just so good. Okay, let's talk about something that's going to make us angry. One minute.
Oh my God, Konmino. Dude, this boy he is like the internet's most hated character right now.
Deservedly so.
So actor Ju Jong-hyuk is in so many dramas. I've just recently been noticing him on my rewatches. Like he does these. He's in Yumi Cells, by the way. He's Wunga's like co-founder of his gaming company thingy.
Oh, that's what I recognized him from. I was like, I've seen this face before, but okay, now
Right?
okay. Yes, that's right. Louis or Lewis or whatever. He was also in DP.
Yes, he was also in DP. But in general, his characters, the characters were great. He was lost inside the characters somehow. So he didn't really stand out. But Kwang Min-ho is just, I can't explain it. Like, aside from like the utter vitriol that like viewers have for him, he's also written so damn well. I know people like him. I have spoken to people like him.
He's so hateable. Yes. So, okay. So, I mean, here's the thing, right? Basically, he's threatened by Young-woo because he knows that she's a better lawyer than her. And at first, he felt like her autism would give him an advantage over her. So he was like fine with being nice to her. And then like once he realizes that she's actually not only a better lawyer, but a better person than him. I mean, that's what I think anyway. But anyway, like once he realizes that like she is so good, he suddenly starts finding ways to like basically just like drag her down. And he does this whole thing where he's like, oh, you're a nepotistic hire. Everyone's treating you differently because you're autistic, which his whole argument makes no sense, but he's basically one of those like reverse racism bros. Like if he knew what reverse racism was, he would think that it was like a real thing.
No, he's totally the kind of guy who would be like, oh, minorities are coming into our country and stealing all the jobs. He's totally that guy.
He's one of those people. Exactly. And like the way that it's written is it's so well written and it's so real. And I think that's why like it's so upsetting, because it's like, oh, yeah, this is triggering.
And also there is a scene with Soo-young where something very small really triggers this guy. Like a small kindness that Soo-young and Junho do for Young-woo. I think it was just giving her a seat in a car, and he had to let that go. And that precipitates this cascade of vitriol towards Young-woo, and Soo-young witnesses that. The thing is, he does what a lot of these people do, which is that he hits you with a lot of vaguely right sounding but like doesn't quite make sense arguments that you are not immediately prepared to have, retorts for. So you're just standing there astonished at the amount of hostility coming off him. And that's what happens with Suyur. I really love that scene because that's very realistic. Often because their logic is so
Yes.
twisted, you haven't had time to untwist it and like, give a legitimate response. So she's just standing there being
100%.
like, what? You just really hate her. You're just saying all of this stuff because you hate her. But what he says sounds like it makes sense. And then 5 minutes of thinking makes you realize that none of it makes sense. Okay,
Yes.
so
Extremely, extremely relatable and true.
So just
Real.
just to recap what you were saying, initially when she joined the firm, again, he wasn't like nice to her. He was just polite as a colleague, nice to her.
Right.
But what he started noticing was that Young-woo is actually smart, and she started sort of gaining quote unquote points with their seniors as soon as she joined their first case. And two, that for instance, she, because of one of the cases, she took some time off. She had to rethink her entire career. She was like, am I even useful to my clients as I am with my...
Or she actually resigned.
Which was not accepted. So she put
and
in
her boss didn't accept
and the
it.
thing is, Minu doesn't know that she had given in papers. From his perspective, she just took like a long paid holiday and faced no consequences for it.
But he does know that because when she comes in for that to like plead for one of them to take Gurami's case, she's like, well, I'm not a lawyer anymore because I resigned. And then lawyer Jung's like, oh no, I haven't processed your resignation yet because like you didn't give me any reason, and you just, and like he's sitting right there and he's
you're right.
making a weird expression and scoffing. So he knows all of that. But he does that thing where like he takes only the pieces of information that are going to be beneficial to his worldview, and he just ignores everything else and like pretends it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
He just like whatever's advantageous to his own like agenda.
Absolutely. So like initially when he sees that her office is empty day after day, you can see from his expression that it's like pissing him off. And then that canteen scene happens where she comes in and she's like, well, I'm not a lawyer anymore. So, you take it. And Attorney Jung's like, no. So you're right. He finds out that she had actually resigned. It doesn't matter to him. The fact that after several weeks of not coming to the office, she comes back again and rejoins, and everything is just, nobody says anything to her. She's not penalized for it.
Hello, Future Porma here, coming in while editing this episode because I wanted to correct something I just said. It's not true that Young-woo did not get penalized. When she came back into office again, Attorney Jung clearly told her that you've used up all your holidays, so you're getting no more leaves after this. So yes, she wasn't harshly punished, but it's not like she ran off consequence-free. It's just that Minu didn't know about any of this. And I don't honestly think it would have mattered to him. Future Porma out.
He sees that as an affront to himself. It was a deliberate personal unfairness done to him, specifically him. And it's just every time anybody's remotely nice to Young-woo, it starts to pile up from there on. Every time anyone's nice to her, oh no, it's a direct, like, that was niceness that was owed to me and it was given to her. It's just such a twisted man.
I mean, there are so many ways that I hate this guy, but like, he does that thing where there's like an imagined injustice is in his own mind of the fact that like, and I mean, there's no evidence for this. If anything, it's the opposite. But he has this weird double standard of like, oh, because she's autistic, everyone treats her, they give her more chances. They treat her more specially, even though like he sees all the time the kind of discrimination she faces. But like that doesn't fit into his like worldview. So he just like ignores that and pretends like it doesn't exist. But then at the same time, because of that imagined affront or that imagined like whatever, which like even if it were true, it's nothing to do with her, right? Like it's not something that she did. It's not true, but even if it was, to counteract quote unquote like that so-called injustice in his mind, he starts doing things like they're put on the same case, he doesn't tell her about it. He like hides information from her and like, to make himself look better to the client and make her look bad. Like he does all these like dirty tricks. And then when she calls him out on it, he's like, well, we're in a competition. So like, you can't, like it's totally fair. And like, he says so much garbage to her. And then like, he also comes between her and Junho, right? Because he cannot imagine that anyone would ever think of her as like a romantic potential, because to him, like, he doesn't see her as fully human. Like that's what it is. Like he doesn't treat her as an equal human.
A lot of people on the internet, while hating on Minu, were also trying to make the point that, oh, but he's the only one who doesn't see her as needing any help. He sees her as strong, because a couple of times he said to Soo-young, why are you helping her? She is the strongest amongst us. So they're like, well, he sees her as strong. No, you know what he sees her as that feared, that xenophobic, that fear you have for the enemy who's like horribly strong and will come into your house and like, do violence to your family. That's what he sees her as. That is not respect, my friend. That is not like respect for an adversary whom you see as an equal.
Right. It's bigotry towards the other. So it's this imagined threat that the majority sees the minority as, basically.
Yeah. He's a threatened majority. He's a puny threatened majority. It's
yeah. It's like that saying of like, if you are used to privilege, then equality feels like oppression. He's kind of feeling that for the first time, and he doesn't like it. And then he's like coming up with all these like bullshit arguments to make himself seem like he's actually justified when he's not. And even like that kindness that you mentioned that like sets him off, it wasn't a kindness. It was like Soo-yeon being
but he
like,
didn't know that. So from his perspective, it was just one additional kindness given to her and not him.
But what I'm saying is like, it's yet another example of him being totally on the wrong end of things and not understanding what's going on, and him thinking that he knows everything. So like here he is like trying to set up Soo-yeon and Junho. Meanwhile, like Soo-yeon figures out that's actually not the case, and she is trying to like matchmake them because she knows that like
Junho likes Youngwoo, but neither of them are making moves.
Right. And also that Minu's interference has made things so much worse, like it's confused her and it's hurt her feelings, and like she's trying to fix the problem that Minu caused, and Minu's just like, why is she always getting special treatment?
And that's another example of how, again, I've heard people say that, well, at least Minu doesn't infantilize Youngwoo. Look, nobody in this office is infantilizing Youngwoo, and Minu specifically dehumanizes her. So
he does.
It does not justify anything. So anytime anyone says anything remotely as if they're defending Minu, just makes my blood boil at this point.
So I haven't seen that defense of Minu, so I'm very upset to hear about that.
It's not like it's an active defense. It's one of those things where they are like, because he's been written so well and so realistically, it's not like he's evil all the time. That's not it. He's also doing like working really hard on these cases. He's having normal, not asshole conversations with people. For instance, when they were walking through that village and this reporter asks about like what the update of the situation is, and he's like, well, it's raining right now, but it's usually a really pretty village. He is capable of having normal conversation, which again, you gotta credit the director and scriptwriter for these like minor scenes that actually makes him seem more well-rounded. He has all of those things. Plus, he's friends with Junho. That wouldn't happen if he was continuously an asshole. The guy must have redeeming qualities. But the fact is that we are absorbing all of this stuff as an audience, and we want to see him be redeemed. But some of us, like you and me, when we hear him talk, we don't just hear him say these things. We hear like his worldview, and we see every other type of people who has had similar worldview and has done devastatingly bad things to the people around them.
Yes.
And it's hard for us to see him as somebody who even deserves any kind of redemption. So it's I lost my point.
And also, like, this is no, you're absolutely right. And this is like what we were talking about before about how it doesn't, like, there are no cartoon villains here, right? Like, this is the kind of, if you are someone who faces discrimination of any kind, like, you don't just get it from these outright, blatant, really obviously bigoted people. You get it from like, there are so many different levels, from like microaggressions where the person doesn't even say anything to, like things like this, where in your workplace, you're made to feel like, you're a diversity hire, or, like your voice doesn't, carry the same weight as somebody else's. Like, those things are like actually way more common than like a hate crime. Like, yes, hate crimes also happen, but like this kind of stuff is what you see more often. And it's like a daily thing that like really, it brings you down over time. And like that's kind of what happened with Youngwoo, right? With that one case where and we didn't talk about this yet, and I know like we're running out of time, but I want to just talk about this briefly. Is like there's that case with the two brothers with a younger autistic brother who is on a much different part of the spectrum than Youngwoo, right? Like I think they say in the drama that he's like he has like kind of the mental age of like a 6-year-old child. But he can't express himself. Like you can see that it there's like a lot going on in his mind, but like he can't express himself as clearly as Youngwoo can. And so his parents and sort of the world treats him in a different way to her, but then at the same time, like they just also just see both of them as autistic and they don't like see anything beyond that. And so like that case kind of brings out and like exacerbates a lot of the prejudice that she's already facing at work. And she gets demoralized because like one after another things just happen. And it's not like one thing that makes her be like, oh, I'm just going to quit. But these things do get to you after a while. And then you just become, it's not that you don't think that you have value, but like you get tired.
Yeah, you do. That was also the case where they did a really lovely scene where Youngwoo is basically just. So basically, they do a recap of how Asperger's, found or how Asperger's syndrome was like first diagnosed. And of course, now it's autism spectrum disorder.
Spectrum disorder.
But back when this happened in Nazi Germany, and Asperger's was a Nazi collaborator. And her entire point is like about 80 years ago, people with autism in Nazi Germany would have been seen as people with no value. They would not have been allowed to live.
Yeah.
And the entire thing was just done so beautifully. It's
Yeah, it's so well done. It's just so like there's so much intelligence and thought and like warmth and love and subtlety and nuance in the way that this drama is written. And I'm just like, so, and we didn't even talk about the whole story with like her mom.
Yeah, so the parents' generation had high drama.
They did.
So since we are being super spoilery over here, her father brought her up by herself, and we knew from early on that he pursued law but never, took the bar exam.
Practiced.
Yeah, which would have let him practice. And he was in SNU just like his daughter, so he was clearly a really smart person. So we don't know the reason why he didn't continue his practice. And then we find out much later on that Youngwoo's mom, who also happens to be the CEO of the rival firm to Hanbada. I forget the rival firm's name. Taesan, right. And Hanbada is the firm where Youngwoo is working. So she is the CEO, and then I suppose the ex-CEO, she steps down at one point because she's fighting it to become a congressional member. Never mind.
Minister of Justice.
Right, that thing. When she was in college, she had dated Youngwoo's dad and she was pregnant. And then obviously she did not want that life. And he had convinced her to have the child and promised that once she had the child, he would take care of her, raise her, and never cross paths with the woman again. Super dramatic oath to take. But something I suppose an early 20-something might do. Like her dad's character is actually really interesting, and her relationship with her dad is also like all sorts of like hearts and spikes. It's really, really great. The aspect that I got stuck on a little bit, especially in the last couple of episodes, was the first thing was because at this point, mother and daughter have met, and it was done in a really, really well shot sequence. Oh,
it was so good. Oh my God, that last scene of episode 8, I was just like speechless with how good it was.
I've always liked the actress Jin Young, who plays Tae-sumi, her mom.
Me too.
But I was so impressed. It was just this long held, like this camera shot that was just held on Jin Young's face, while Youngwoo was just in her usual slightly monotonous way, looking away from the woman. She was just telling her who she was. And then just like saying everything she had to say, which is also a great thing. Like there were no interruptions. Youngwoo was allowed to have her say. And for the entire time, Jin Young's she was not expecting that. So like every emotion on her face was absolutely honest. From surprise to comprehension to utter devastation to this rising fear, but like I don't even know fear of what, like fear that my daughter hates me, fear of like revelation. You don't know what is going on, but just
And even like the one question that she asks, right, is like not a question that you're expecting because of who you've sort of observed her to be. Is like, did you resent me?
Yeah.
And I was like, oof, like I did not expect her to ask that question out of all questions.
I didn't either. And because I like like so far I've loved the writer's work so much, I'm willing to trust them in how to handle this character. However, in the fandom, Jinny's character is getting a lot of hate right now because you've had those moments where Youngwoo was like, if I was a whale, my mother would never have abandoned me. It's like those very, heartwarming phrases and stuff, right? But like this woman, Taesumi, when she's like 20, 21 years old, she is forced to go through pregnancy because of like an emotional request from her boyfriend, so that she's risking her life. Listen, every time a woman gives birth, she's risking her life. You cannot convince me otherwise. And she goes through all of that stuff and then has to lose the baby because she has to. She is committed to that. That's the only, and I'm pretty sure that the family she came from would not have agreed to this if she didn't give up the baby either. So she's in this situation where I don't even have to know her story. Knowing what position she comes from and the fact that she agreed to his request is enough for me to tell at least this much, that she went through absolutely horrific emotions as well as like the physical, everything you go through because of pregnancy, and then she lost the child. I mean, come on. I'm not going to blame this woman. She's in her early 20s. I am not willing to villainize her. Yeah, sorry, go on, Anisa.
I agree with you. I haven't been paying that much attention to the fandom reaction as you clearly have, so I haven't seen that, but like that's kind of infuriating. I blame the dad, honestly. The dad made me so angry in the last few episodes. So like I know we don't have much time. I'll just like list out things that made me mad. From the beginning, he's kind of done that thing a lot, which like I've heard autistic people complain about, which is like, I don't know how like in the rest of the world, in the US specifically, the narrative about autism has been led by like parents of autistic people, and for a long time it's been framed of like, oh, the poor parents who have to deal with autistic children.
Yeah.
And it's like really, I mean, it's very upsetting and very wrong because it centers the parents as having to like bear this burden instead of actually centering the people that it's actually about and like letting them lead them. Like they are the ones that should, be listened to because they're speaking and like nobody. So anyway, like that whole thing. So he does say that he kind of leans into that, like, oh, like as your dad, I felt so lonely. And that was like, okay, sure, dad. Like he does like feel sorry for himself a lot that he has an autistic daughter. And like, that's kind of been bothering me since the beginning, but he was so loving to her in other ways that I was like, okay, whatever. Like it's realistic, right? Like this is a dynamic that definitely happens, right?
You can't just have like a dad who's all nice and all good at all times. So that would have been...
Exactly. Like it's real, right? So I was like, okay, like it annoys me, but he's a dad. So then he like barges into her workplace during working hours in front of everyone to meet with the CEO, like, and then he like confronts the CEO. And then he's like, there's no like point to that confrontation because he's like, oh, well, even though you hired her with like other motives, I'm still going to let it keep going and let her keep working here. So like, what was the purpose of that? Like, that's what kind of sparks this whole thing with like Minu seeing him coming out of the office. And then it gives him ammunition to like, and then he like blindsides her with the information that like Taesumi is her mom, which like I wanted her to find out, but I didn't want her to find out that way. Like he does. And I love how it's written because like Youngwoo basically calls him out on it. She's like, why are you always like making all these decisions for my life? Like I'm an adult. Like let me be an adult and make my own decisions. But it's like the blame for this situation. I mean, I'm glad that Youngwoo is alive. Like that's not what I'm saying, but like he has made a lot of decisions along this process, which like I just was bothered by so many of
Because
them.
you don't always have to have a villain in every story. It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
I'm glad was raised and is who she is right now. But if her mom had gone through with an abortion, I would not have villainized her, and I don't villainize her for giving the child up. Her dad is absolutely a gem for having worked so hard to raise her and like help her in every way he could. The fact that she got into SNU and the fact that like he's taken every job, like, because opened up his
Yeah.
own restaurant, he's worked so hard to support her, and every morning he makes her the breakfast exactly the way she wants. He's dedicated his life to her. So yes, kudos to that. But that does not mean that there needs to be a villain opposite him, like the person who did not do all of that stuff. The fact is that he made this bizarre promise to his ex-girlfriend and then just gave up on his entire career, which might have helped him help Young-woo even more, not just once she grew up, but while she was growing up. He would have had a well-paid job. He would have just had like better access to better resources. It's just a decision he made. Whether it was worth it, whether it was the right decision or the wrong decision, none of that matters. These are decisions that were made. So, but because he made his own life hard by giving up his career and then had to go through all of this hardship, does not mean that Taesumi is the evil one here. It's
right. And to be fair, like he does admit that when they're in the hospital and he tells her kind of the story of what happened. And he's like, I shouldn't have like stuck to this weird promise that I made. I should have done what was best for you. Okay, but then like, why is he showing up at her workplace and making these weird deals with her CEO and,
So I am, first of all, not completely convinced that the CEO of a firm would hire a genius student out of SNU who also happens to have autism just because and she might turn out to be her rival's daughter. There is no confirmation at this point. And so she, like, every time you're hiring a rookie, even if it's just for a year, you're putting in resources to their training. And she's going to be wasting all of that resources on the off chance that there might be a relationship. Like, come on, this is too much. I mean, yes, I know it's a drama, but I don't think it's that kind of a drama.
Yeah. The dad is just he's drawing all kinds of conclusions on his own and just like doing things without talking to anybody, without like...
I feel like he's projecting a bit. Like, he's like, and of course, he's seen Young-woo face prejudice. He's faced it himself. So he understands, like, when you come from a lot of bullying because of a certain situation, you're likely to see bullying where none exists. That is a perfectly normal thing and some really sad reality. But the way he goes about doing the whole thing, he barges into her office, is like, I know you are evil, but even though you're evil, I will not tell my daughter to leave your job because it might be the only job she ever gets. So you get to use her just once, but never. I mean, dude, first of all, you don't get to make the decision that the CEO gets to use her once.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about
her
that. That made
dad
me
so
mad.
clearly sees Young-woo as his daughter, yes, but also in a way his property, like his thing that he dedicated his life to. He's like the ultimate helicopter parent.
Yes, he really is. And I just want to clarify, like, this is no way is a complaint about the writing. I think the writing is just excellent. It's just like he is doing his job as being a frustrating character very well. Okay, I think we need to wrap up here. We were planning to do my liberation notes, but I don't think we'll have time for that. But we will come back with a spoiled yak on my liberation notes at some point in the future.
Yes.
Yes, Borma?
Yes, we absolutely will. And yes, thank you for listening to us. Anissa, where can they find us?
So you can find us on Twitter at Dramas Overflow. You can find me on Twitter at Anissa Khalifa _
You can find me, Parma, at Festa Faster. You can find us on Instagram at dramasoverflowers _ and on Facebook. You can also email us at dramasoverflowers@gmail.com.
And you can find our blog, which includes the first impressions review of Extraordinary Attorney Woo at dramasoverflowers.net. So we will also link it and sign up for our newsletter. There's a link for that there too. Dramas Over Flowers is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.
Thank you for listening, guys. Bye.
That's it. Bye.